Hey,
Hi, how are you, Brian?
I'm good. I was stretching. I was doing a tour of the panning equipment.
Oh, well, I should have paid attention to that one.
Well,
That's the
you,
next
you
one on
could.
our
So
list.
I was just showing the big 60 kg panner.
The big boy.
How you doing?
Good, good. That's actually next on our list. So I should have joined.
Well, you are welcome to come whenever you want, but it's probably busy season for you.
Yeah, we have the luxury that where I am based out of here in the North Fork, we have chocolate season followed by North Fork season. So it's almost like all year round season. So that's pretty lucky. But it is the challenge to navigate through such hot weather.
You and everybody else, right?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry. I'm trying to get myself framed right so I don't look like I just have this like halo behind me.
Yeah, I tried to get it with the sell me machinery, but I didn't have enough service. So I was like, they're just gonna have to deal with me and Sunny over here.
That's right. I've got one. So we talked a little bit the other day. So thanks for joining us. And by the way, thanks for being a Sell Me customer. Much appreciated.
Of course.
Um,
Thank you so
and
much.
we talked about we're going to hear the story, but you got to explain the last name to me.
So
We could start there. How's that? So
yeah,
that will be a segue into some of the other stuff.
of course, yeah. So basically, my name is Ursula 17. It is spelled in Roman numerals so that it can be read in any language in the world. Um, and so I dropped my last name when I started my career because it was a little challenging. It was a mouthful. So I just kind of dropped it and it became my full name, but I was born with the legal name of Ursula 17 already.
We missed the middle part. Your sound dropped out.
Oh, sorry. I think someone was obviously calling at the wrong time. But basically, it was originally my middle name. So my name being Ursula 17, and it's Salaida. But I dropped my last name when I started my career. It was a mouthful. People didn't get it. And how cool is 17? So why not?
Probably better. It's cooler than like 3.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a really cool number. Now, I don't know if it's me because it's my name. I see it everywhere. It's in the movies. It's this. It's that. It's kind of a universal number and it's a powerful number. So we try and stick to it, and things just happen. Like we were looking for a rental space and it happened to be 17. So, oh, meant to be.
Like I don't have anything to say. Like I ran out of stuff. Like I was trying to come up with a segue into how that relates to your story, but it does, right? I mean,
So
you're
it does in the sense of, I have a lot of pride in it. I like to be different. I like to be challenging, and that kind of must have started there. Like maybe when I was younger, I wanted to be like a Samantha or something that was a little more, like my friends. But then I hit about 13, and I was like, this is really cool. Like I have a number. Nobody has that. But it isn't an intricate, it was basically my father wanted me to be named 17 and my mother wanted me to be named Ursula, and my mom said don't do that to her, so they decided on Ursula 17. But it's just his favorite number. He doesn't ever have much more to say than that it was his favorite number.
got it. So chocolate's newish for you. Is that fair?
Well, I was, in the pastry world, and as you know, we kind of all then end up branching into whether patisserie or fine dining or breads or something, and chocolate just ended up being my thing. But for, I would say, the most part of my career, it was within a different scheme than I am now. I was in the Michelin restaurants, and I did always kind of find my way onto the Petit Four team so that I could get my hands into chocolate. And I always pushed myself to kind of better myself. Where can I learn the most? There's a running joke with all the friends that we were kind of at iFiori and in the Altamira group in the city. Together, they were like, we all wore blue aprons like everybody does, and I would come in a white apron because I wanted to practice being cleaner. I was like, okay, now I can do them. I'm clean molds. Now let's work on like not staining myself. But I remember the first time I didn't stain my apron once. It was like a whole celebration thing. So it's newish in the sense of my venture, but I always kind of gravitated to that part of the pastry world.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting. So this project's been going on for about a year and a half, and I think we all have a food story, right? I'm not gonna, I'm not naive enough to say that only certain cultures like food, right? I mean, like we all love sitting down with our family and eating, but I think when we get to this level, it's really important to us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and growing up, I mean, food was an important piece of the story, I assume.
So oddly enough, my mother does not cook at all, so I don't have those like, oh, I love cooking with, and my grandparents, everybody lives in Barcelona still. So I was more of like, I learned to cook to survive. Otherwise I would have survived on pizza and Chinese food my whole life. So my mom kind of jokes, I don't know where she got it, but, I think for me, I am a career changer, but I changed it right after college. And I knew that I was scared that this hobby, I was going to taint it if it became my career. And I was, what they call now a foodie. It was more of, I really always enjoyed good food. And being from the north part of Catalonia, we have like amazing charcuterie, amazing gastronomy, and that kind of was all evolving, the change between the nouveau cuisine and, kind of the Spanish bringing in this gastronomic molecular world is kind of when I was like, this is blowing my mind. So
Right.
I was into going, I was dead set on going to El Bulli, and I made it on like the last closing week. And, I bet Fevicat, whatever crazy thing, I need to try it. And then it was the Adria's, I sat down with Albert Adria after I had a meal at Tickets, and I was like, all right, I'm done playing. Like, how do I get to where you are? How do I do this? And he said, go to the French Pastry School in Chicago. And I enrolled the following, open season. I enrolled in French Pastry School.
Yeah, Jackie and Sebastian know what they're doing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And Chef Ming, who did my chocolates class there, I believe she's still in Las Vegas, but she was one bad egg girl. And I was like,
well,
yes.
My story about In Ming, because I've known In Ming longer than I want to admit, right? I was working for a food importer, and I've been there like 3 weeks. And we go on this trip, and we get invited out to this dinner. And my boss, who's a Neil Rohira, who won Best Sugar Showpiece in the world with Coupe de Monde, is at this table, and Ewald Notter's at this table, and there's like a former White House chef at the table, and there's In Ming at the table. And my pastry story is I started doing pastry because I watched the year that Food Network had a documentary about when Ewald and Ming and Michelle won the Coupe de Monde, right?
Yeah.
And like, holy crap, that's unbelievable. I want to do that. And I may have had a little crush on In Ming at the time, right? And like this whole thing. And so I'm at this table, and I'm afraid to say a word, right? Because like I don't belong at this table. And so I eat my dinner very quietly. And as we're leaving, In Ming is like 3 steps ahead of me talking to somebody. And I'm walking and I'm following her, and I kind of scamper up next to her. I'm like, Chef, can I talk to you for a moment? And she goes, sure. And I'm like, Chef, you're part of the reason that I'm where I am. And you're like, was my inspiration for becoming a pastry chef.
That's amazing.
Right. And she very calmly kind of looks at me, and Brian, you must be pretty good at what you do if you've gotten to where you are right now in that amount of time. And like, I'm like in tears, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, thank you, Chef. And she wanders off. But I think we've gotten to know each other since then, and we've become pretty good friends. And she's like one of the most underrated chefs in America right now. Like, you say the name on Instagram, and nobody knows who you're talking about, and they should.
I agree.
Right? And like, we were talking one time. I'm like, so do you have an Instagram page? She goes, yeah.
She doesn't need to. She's too good.
She's In Ming.
Yeah.
But if you got to study chocolate from In Ming, you're good.
And honestly, between her and Chef Joshua Johnson, who like a year or two later was also doing, was on the USA team, the two of them, their passion and how they could transcribe it into class was, for lack of a better, it was a turn on. I'm just like, oh yes, like It's scientific. I love numbers. It's creative. It's limitless. There's so much to it. And you're hearing these people who have passion for it. It's hard to not, almost take it on for yourself. It was honestly some of the best. I still use those recipes. I still think about them. What would Ming do right now? You know what I mean? That's definitely 1,000%. I could not agree more.
Yeah, I think it's, I don't know. It's funny. Like I'm becoming part of the old guard, like that, where that torch gets passed from like somebody younger to, and how do you get there? You just don't die. But
yeah.
I mean, my driver's license says I'm going to turn 50 this year, so I must be getting a little older. But, people like her and Ewald Notter and Stanton Ho and people that really set the playing field for what like Susan Notter just hopped on too. Sorry, Susan, but you too. Like they set the path for what's happening in pastry and chocolate in America right now. Because without those people, without Ming, we're not where we are today.
1,000%.
We're just not,
1,000%.
So, there's an MOF on that team. There's some real deal people at the French Pastry School.
I watch them. I still talk to Jackie more so than Sebastian, because he's a little bit more active on social media, but I still keep in touch with them. I go back for continuing education classes there. Now they have the Butter Book, so I'm so happy for them and everything that it's evolved in. I'm probably impartial, but I think when I was there, it was like the best. We had Joelle, we had so many amazing, and we had the guests that were coming into our classes. The special guests it was surreal, and I do still think I'm a firm believer that I get the question a lot, like, should I go to pastry school, right? Like a lot of people, I'm sure you get that question too, like, is it worth it? What should I do? And I think it's hard. I don't think that's, cooking school may be where you get the most knowledge. You'll learn the most in the field, like being in a kitchen, that you have to really be in it to grasp it. But it being the only sweets-focused school really in the U.S. really gave a foundation that was unstoppable. I knew, and I remember day one, Chef Sebastian's like doing this funny dance. He's like, you got to know how to move. You got to know how to move in the kitchen. You don't know. And it was one of those things that I was like, I approach every job I've gotten at any restaurant I've gotten. He's like, wow, how? I knock on the door, exactly what they suggest. I knock on the door as many times as I need to until they say yes, and then I just work my butt off. Maybe I don't know as much as the sous chef or as much as the girl next to me, but I can be cleaner, I can be more organized, and that, goes a long way with that good attitude. And that's their, that I couldn't have said it any better than the way they teach it.
Yeah, I always answer that question, how do you get where you want to go? And it's like you put your head down, you work hard, and keep your mouth shut. Yeah. And like the reality of it is, you're right. Like I went to a small program outside of DC when I just made the change, and they were really honest. It's like, look, we're going to give you skills here, but you're going to learn to get faster when you get your first job. Yeah. But if you can be precise the same way that you're scaling a kilo when you're scaling 50 kilos, if you're making 50 instead of 1, you're going to do well. Yeah. And I think that's the hard lesson about that is that you're not going to walk in the door and be called chef.
Oh yeah.
And if you are, maybe you need to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like,
that's where I want to be. That's for sure. Right.
Like, and I was talking about somebody with this in the last couple of weeks. Like, I need somebody that can help make me better. Mm-hmm. Right. And like, yeah, at FPS, there are a lot of people that can help me make me be better. Right. I mean, we just ran off a bunch of names.
Yeah.
And eventually to open your own business and to have the success that you're having there is only because you've had people help you make you be better along the way, probably.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think, and it is the French Pastry School, but they were very good at, kind of getting rid of the stigma of the nouvelle cuisine, of this idea, oh, I have the best croissant, I'm not giving you my recipe. And actually, I learned this right after them from the Adrias, and I remember asking him the same thing, like, so why are all of a sudden, you know, you have this idea before it was like a secret sauce or a secret, you know, it's my ingredients. And I remember, I think it was Ferran who just looked at me and said, well, what would push me to be better? If I share my things and then everybody knows how to do it, I have to come up with something. I have to innovate. I have to create. I have to get better. Because if I'm the secret and I'm this, you're going to get stuck doing that for the rest of your life because you're the only one that does it. So where's the fun in that? And so I didn't notice till I had that conversation that my experience at the French Pastry School was just that. It was almost like the bridge between those two concepts of like having pride in your recipes, testing them to the nth degree, but at the same time not being afraid to, you know, teach, and that makes you better, you know, no matter what level you're at. And that's something they, you know, I could talk about them all day. I love them.
Yeah. Anyway, so you do FPS, and then back to New York.
Yep.
And knocking on a lot of doors, or a couple of doors here or there.
Yep. Some only offered stages. Happy to take them. And this was like borderline when you could still work for free without getting in trouble. And I ended up at iFiori, which I chose because at that point I wasn't so sure about. I knew I loved chocolate, you know, but it's easy to love chocolate when it means to talk. You know what I mean? Like let me see what it's like in real life. And so I chose a restaurant like iFiori because since they didn't serve the Langham, but they're inside the Langham, so we were required to open 3 meals a day. So to have the Michelin standard with 300 to 500 cover services with a brunch and a breakfast, where the room for growth was immense. You know, you can start on nighttime desserts, which were fine dining, lunchtime desserts, which were more like boutique-y, and then you could go to breakfast service and you're doing pastries, and you're on the petit 14. There was just so many intricacies, and I'm still talking in like a 10 by 10 space, by the way, like
right.
No space.
Because who's going to build a real pastry kitchen? No point. Who needs a real pastry?
No. It's always second thought. It's always figure it out. It's always, I'm sorry, your oven smells like garlic.
Yeah. Hey, we had the oven on at 400 earlier, but we took your macaroons out. I hope that's okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. Great.
And then you're going to be like, oh, I ran my plates too late. Can you gift them some macarons? Be like, oh, remember you took them out of the oven.
See, but I'm old enough to remember that like the pastry bags were still canvas, and the Garmager guys would walk over and they'd take them and they'd put garlic mashed potato in them, and they would pipe garlic mashed potato for a couple hours, and then they would just put them back in your sink and not tell you until you then pipe pate choux the next morning, and then your chef would yell at you because everything tastes like garlic.
Yeah. Oh man.
Winner. It was awesome.
I can't imagine that. Because I get frustrated when it's in a kitchen, you know, it's just in the oven.
Yeah. These are great. It's working perfect. Why do they taste so bad? I don't know, chef. I don't know. Yeah. Did you smell the bag before you put the shoe in there? No, I didn't, chef. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that's actually funny that you say that because, you know, when you work in kitchens, you get in the habit in pastry of smelling everything, right? Like, does this camera smell? But, and I still do it here. And I thought to myself the other day, I don't know why I'm smelling like I'm the only one that uses this crap.
I do it at home. And my wife will give me a look, right? I take a bowl out of the cupboard, and I'm like marinating chicken, and I'm like still smelling the bowl. And she's like, "Are you feeling okay?" I'm like, "You know, yeah, yes."
Yeah, it's just a habit, you know. I don't know. It's something you learn because you learn the hard way, and then it just becomes a habit, really.
Yeah, I think the 200 eclairs that I had to redo that on the fly that afternoon taught me always smell the pastry bag.
Yeah, I
always smell the pastry bag.
Anything, the quart container, the can, because even if it's labeled pastry all over, only pastry sees that label.
They don't care. Do they know how to read? Do hot cooks know how to read?
I don't know they know the word pastry.
No, I've got friends on that side. I was on that side first. I get it.
I know. No,
so okay, so you're doing that. So you're in New York, and you're doing fine dining and learning your way around the kitchen.
Yeah, and I think that was the best succession after the French Pastry School because I really got to hit all of the types of pastry, and that's really where I was like chocolate's it for sure.
But I think that's a good bit of advice, like because we were talking about questions we get asked about how do you get where you get, and I went to work I went to work for the Ritz-Carlton company in a big hotel for the same principle, right? We had a fine dining restaurant. we had brunch, we had banquets for 1,000,
Yep.
right?
Amenities.
So,
Yeah, like.
right, we had to make little chocolate amenities, and we had to make macarons, but we also had to make mousse for, you had to make 500 creme brulee at a time, right?
Yeah.
You know,
1,000%. And I think I tell people that, because unfortunately in the industry, I have friends that went to, no, I'm not going to name because I don't believe in it, but there's some schools that they're crazy expensive, almost like Ivy League prices for a job that's essentially going to be minimum wage your entire career. So it seems like a sucker's choice in that sense. One thing is if you have the opportunity or you have a scholar, everyone has a different situation, but if you're not in that fortunate situation, I do know friends that now have student loans. We're never going to be making six figures, and you put yourself in a really hard position when at the end of the day it might have taken you a little bit longer, but you could have just jumped into a job that's paying you, not signing for a loan, and learned. Because like I think I heard you say with the chat with Jessica from Bliss, I couldn't afford anything. So while I was at the French Pastry School, I would always volunteer to dishwash anybody's class, any of the extra chefs that were coming in. I would dishwash just so I could watch the demos.
right. I think it's funny because I think you made the joke about I could still stage when you could work for free, and yeah, I did a lot of stuff for free. Yeah, I'll work at that event because the chef is this event. Is this person, and I want to see how that person works for an hour. And yeah, I'm kind of like, I'm down the line, like watching them at the other end of the kitchen because I was, washing dishes or plating.
Whatever, yeah.
But I think you can't get those experiences unless you go out and get those experiences, right? Because people don't want to pay to teach us to do things they already know how to do.
Of course. It takes time training, it's hard. It takes time from training, and then some people don't stick around for more than a year, and so you spend a whole year. I don't even remember, someone said to me a long time ago was try, I think at the French Pastry School, they said stay 1 year, and after 1 year, you're sure you don't like it, find something else. But if you're cool, push yourself to stay for 2, because it isn't until after the first year that you're actually feeling comfortable, feeling confident in yourself, and that's when you get the opportunities, like maybe on your side time, again, it's hard to do that now with the laws, but maybe on your side time you create a little something, you show chef, oh crap, it's on the menu, you know what I mean? But
right.
it gives you that first year, you're not comfortable, you're still learning, where's the sous vide, where's the sieve, where's the like the first year, I don't care how many years you've been doing it, you're still learning the kitchen. You're learning how that kitchen works and how that chef expedites and how that works. So you can't really call it within a year, how you don't know it yet.
Yeah, I staged at this really great restaurant for like a week, and I didn't know where the employee bathroom was until the last day.
Yeah, exactly. Because I've learned, you're working, your head's down, you're not thinking about where's the bathroom.
Well, because I didn't want to like leave the line and be gone for too long, and like I'll just go when I get home.
Yeah, been there. Yeah.
Okay, so you're in New York. So you were at the Lang, or you were there for more than a year, I assume.
Yes, hit in about 5, and I was there during a little bit of a transition as the group was expanding to other restaurants. So my direct boss and my direct sous chefs all kind of left, and it was cool because it was my first time. I was the vet. I was the one left behind to make sure shit didn't.
Right.
And so I would have stayed, honestly, infinitely, but I went back to the French Pastry School and I took a class with Oriol Balaguer, and he didn't know I was Catalan, but he halfway through the class, he was like stuck on a word. So he said it in Catalan and I understood, and I ended up literally translating for the rest of the week.
Did they give you a discount on the class? Did they at least like cut you like some of the breaks?
They didn't, but he offered me a job, so.
Okay, that works.
Okay, yeah, I'll translate. And I went back to New York, really torn because, it was between finally maybe getting a promotion in terms of like the hierarchy within AMG, or like Oriol Balaguer, you know what I mean? And Chef Alina was my boss at the time, and she looked at me and she goes, Ursula, you're fired. You need to go. And I was like, wait, am I really? I panicked, and she's like, no, but if that's what it's going to take, like, I'm telling you, like, positions like this will come for you, but jobs like Oriol Balaguer don't just come around.
Right.
So that was the next step. And I would say for most people, maybe it was a little more thinking to it, but I'm from Barcelona. My father lives there. My whole family, besides my mother and I, live there. So it wasn't too hard. I knew that I had a support system there and I had something to fall back on there. So it wasn't maybe as scary as it sounds. So like, oh, I'm going to move.
Yeah, me moving to Barcelona would not go well.
I mean, you'd be surprised because after Oriol, I was at Tickets and we did service in English. No one was from the same place, but we all spoke English. and that was cool. I mean, Oriol was great. I learned a lot of, it was my first time in a bakery setting, supplying, 10 different outlets. I learned production in that sense because it requires a whole different side of your brain to organize that many outlets. But I do think jumping, I missed fine dining. I really did. So I went right into Tickets, and I carry a lot of the philosophies from there with me through since all my other jobs, and definitely here at Dissette. One of the biggest ones, I don't know if you've heard of they call it the middle table. I don't know if you've ever heard of that concept they do.
No.
So, for about 3 hours of prep every day, everybody, sweet, savory, garde manger, the general manager, the bartender, everybody, we extended all the tables in the restaurant to one big long table, and we did the tedious work. So not one person is shucking coconuts and peeling them all day. It was all 60 of us, so it lasted 3 minutes. Peas, potatoes, you know what I mean? Like all those things that you think the new guy should be doing absolutely all day. There was no putting anyone in that position. It was everybody did all the grunt work together. It did team building in that sense, and at the same time, you slow down after an hour of literally, because we did desserts that were served on roses, so we literally had to every day pick out the ugly petals, make sure it was flat, and after maybe 20 minutes, you're like, oh. Whereas all of you are doing it, all of you are like in on it, and it's a 10-minute thing. Next thing you know, it like 5,000 roses just got done.
Cool.
So I carried a lot of little things from there because it was one of those teams that they are all happy and they all stayed for years and years. So you got to be doing something right there.
How long were you there?
A year.
And then back to New York?
I did a stop as my first pastry chef. The first time I was, the head of the department was at a Michelin restaurant that specialized in, I don't even think farm to table does it justice. It's almost like land to table because we foraged a lot. We had hunters on staff. It was the coolest thing ever.
Where was that?
It's called Calandric, and it's about 2 hours north of Barcelona, almost in France, in a little valley. I had done a stint at a chocolate shop there with a really good friend of mine, Jordi Ferrer, he's fifth generation, 500 years, and we did giant chocolate sculptures, and that's where I found out about this restaurant. But this restaurant combined it all for me. Besides the fact that I was excited to finally feel, like I earned my chef title, I'm still American. There's the FDA. You cannot just stop on the side of the highway because you saw wild mint and elderberry and collect it and like make some syrup and serve it tomorrow.
Well, you could.
You can, but I don't know how long that's going to last. So someone said something.
Well, it depends. If you put it on Instagram, it's going to last about like 7 minutes. If you just kind of keep that on the DL, you probably could do that forever. Because I have some friends here in Buffalo. Spring is ramp season.
Ooh, yeah.
And like every chef in town goes out and collects their own ramps, and then like they call each other and they tell them where they found the good ones this year, right? But if there's ramps on a menu in Buffalo in the spring,
it was foraged.
It was foraged.
That's really cool though. I love that. I mean, I absolutely love it, which is kind of, well, we can get into that, but it's kind of what drew me to North Fork once I did come back. But there was like, we would make hydrolates so that the dry ice that went with the petit four smelled like the volcanic region that we were in. You know, like it was so outlandish.
I'm gonna say that's like way over my head. Like you lost me at like the dry ice smelled like anything.
Exactly. That you're like, how the hell do you do that? And they did. I learned so much in that sense of like, I taste everything now. Like I just bought a new house and like my fiance's like, what the hell are you doing? Because I'm like, he's like, how are you end up picking up poison ivy? And I'm like, it'll sting. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, my wife got me the the restaurant in Chicago whose name I'm now blanking on.
Grace or Blackbird.
Aladea's cookbook a
Oh
couple years
yes,
ago,
yes.
right? And I'm like flipping through it, and I'm like one, it's cool, but two, like I'm not gonna make any of this stuff at home.
No.
Like I'm gonna make a pillow that's full of air that smells like a marshmallow, so that I can put the mousse on top of it. Like what?
Yeah, there's only viable in a few situations. You know, it's not like a cookbook that you keep over your cupboard over the stove top.
I can't even make egg rolls in my own kitchen, let alone like at home. Let alone, but anyway.
Well, they always say chefs don't really cook for themselves. You know, like I eat like garbage at home.
Yeah, I think last night I got home from this trip, right? And like I'm like, hey, it's late. Is there any food? And my wife kind of looks at me and goes, you can go forage. I'm like, okay, cool. So I ate some frozen shumai and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
The fridge forage.
It was fun, you know.
Yeah.
And now we're out of strawberry jelly, so I gotta go get more. But
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
okay, so now you're back in New York.
Now I'm back in New York. I had been brought back to help in New Paltz at the Mohawk Mountain House. They were investing quite a lot of money to kind of, it's known for spa and hiking and all these things, so they really have turned it around and try and make it a dining destination. So I was
Who
brought
were you? Were you brought in to be the pastry chef, or were you?
yeah, so my friend Audrey Billups was the executive pastry chef, and I had worked with her at Alta Maria Group, and she knew I was kind of itching to come back. And you know, everything's got a price, so I was like, what can we do? What do you want? What do you need? Like, let's talk. And I was only there for a year, but that's what I planned. I knew that I didn't want to go into like big hotel-y things, but I love implementing systems. I love consulting. I love organizing. You know, I love doing all that. So it was right up my alley, and she kind of really wanted to focus on like a great chocolate program. So that was fun. I mean, it was crazy. I lived up there, and the year flew by. We had in the summer you have like 15 different outlets between like
Right.
and barbecue, blah 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 blah. Blah. So it's not my cup of tea, but again, it's somewhere that when I get new cooks that want to learn, I say you need to go somewhere like that. You can start in
Yep.
one department and really learn all of them, and then you'll know what's yours. If you love making ice creams, go to an ice cream shop. I love
Right.
making chocolate, but I didn't love working in bakeries. You know what I mean?
Right. So when was that?
That was 3 years ago now. And I moved to the North Fork because I bought a bed and breakfast, which I did recently sell because I couldn't do that end to set. And this is the passion. So it was almost like a placeholder for me, but it was an idea of moshing everything together, you know, doing dinners. It was called the Harvest Inn. So I grew a lot of things on property. We harvested a lot of the food that we served on property. But you know, with the pandemic, it was extremely hard and stressful because you go into it with an overhead, even though it's your home and there's an overhead. So that was hard.
Right.
And you guys kind of probably knew about the set more than most of the world did because I kind of was building the factory and getting my machines in and everything a little on the DL before we
Right.
opened up, because I think we went backwards from most chocolate companies. I had been doing a lot of corporate, custom, you know, wedding favors and things like that, wholesale versus starting at, you know, most people start and then end up having wholesale accounts.
Right.
So it kind of went backwards, but then I opened to e-commerce in November for Thanksgiving. with the idea that I would kind of just be at markets and here and there. And, you know, the community is so supportive. 5 months later, I opened a brick and mortar, not even December, January, February, March. Okay, 5 months later for Easter, we launched the brick and mortar.
I guess it's going okay then.
It is. It is. I mean, I thought there was no money in the chocolate shop, honestly. Like, people end up selling ice cream and coffees and blah, and like, I was like, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? I don't want to do that. So we're a little different. We're unconventional, and I think it's because of my background that, like, I don't have a bonbon case yet. I say yet because I do want to. I just wanted to see how the brick and mortar was received before, you know, diving down that alley. But we do collections. You know, I kind of say that my brand is modeled a little bit after a fashion designer almost. Like, our signature box is released biannually. The recipes are retired, never to be seen again. They're a little bit more out there, like black sesame tahini, and, you know, just a little more adventurous. And then we have palettes. We have the Lovers Collection, which is boxes of just dark, like, you know, just dark chocolate bonbons, just no chocolate bonbons. And then we have the holiday ones that we release one every holiday, and we keep some things, like we now have a signature salted caramel because it's been so well received. It makes like every box pretty much.
Right.
And flavors that get inspired by the holiday. So Easter had like a sugar cookie bonbon, and, you know, egg shaped thing, you know, kind of get inspired in that sense.
Yeah, I can't remember whether it was on your page or on the set's page. There were a whole bunch of like unusual bars I was looking at this morning, right? That are, I guess they're really tablets.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
You know, that were definitely a little outside of the normal lane. Is that fair? Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, and I've only posted the normal ones yet. So actually this past week we launched one that has quickly become a fan favorite, is a cannoli bar. So yeah, I definitely, and that's why I say I think that my background really influences it, because I try and think of the bonbon as like a vessel to carry all this flavor. So I try and balance, you know, not just, you know, now there's a big movement for like proper balance and formulation, which I completely agree with, but also a balance like there would be in a dessert. We care about texture, we care about acidity, we care about saltiness, you know. Nothing I make will ever be too sweet, because it's just, I'm not a sweet person, actually, believe it or not. So that's why, yeah, things are a little out there. So I'm like, okay, let's do cannoli. How are we going to do that? So we make cannoli shells, we crunch them up, and we candied cocoa nibs, and we added vanilla to some white chocolate, and we kind of just like made it go in that sense. So, and sometimes it works, and sometimes, I mean, you know, sometimes I'm like, what the hell did I just make?
You know what's interesting? I was at the Frito-Lay Innovation Center a couple of years ago, right? And they have this building. I don't know. It's like 3 stories tall. There's like 60 people that like work in culinary, right? And I'm talking to one of these guys at lunch, and I'm like, "What do you do all day?" And he's like, "I make food." I'm like, "Okay, but why?" And he's like, "Well, because somebody says we need a turkey and stuffing potato chip. And we make turkey and stuffing for everybody until we decide that this is what a turkey and stuffing is supposed to taste like."
Oh my God.
And then we hand that all to the flavor chemists, and they work on the flavor to match the turkey and stuffing that we've made in the kitchen. And then that all goes to the potato chip guys, and they have to match it back to my turkey and stuffing.
Wow, I didn't know. That's crazy.
Yeah, and so sort of like what you're kind of talking about is that same kind of like concept that I think if we all have time, that's a great way to look at, like, I want to create apple tatin in my praline.
Yeah.
I make apple tatin until it's the pinnacle of apple tatin, and then I start to work on the recipe, because I know what it's supposed to be like.
Exactly.
I know what I want.
1,000%.
So, but you did say there's some things that you get to that stage and it's not what you were thinking it would be. What's one that hasn't worked?
So it was funny because I actually had this idea years ago. I have tons of moleskins of ideas now that I am finally my own boss. They're getting, put into the R&D cycle. But one was I had this idea of almost like turning a s'more inside out, which is actually really funny because a couple weeks after I did it, I saw some gimmicky like Instagram ad that now is selling them. But it's not that it's tasted bad; it just was not logical. Like it was a gooey mess. How, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
So yeah, it tasted like a s'more, great, and I was a homemade marshmallow and homemade I made the chocolate, I made my own graham, blah 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 blah. But everything I do, I try as a consumer's point of view, So I bring it home and we put it on the fire. Let's see, and it was just like falling off. I was like, probably not the best idea I've ever had. So, and again, and the fails aren't always because of taste, Sometimes it's because of that, because it's a great idea, but it makes no sense in a productive environment. It would make sense as like maybe a favor or something in a group setting that we all understand that it's going to be a sticky mess, but you would get known as the sticky mess s'mores girl,
There are worse things you could be.
Yes, that is true. So we just stuck with the tradition. We do a s'mores kit, and we do make the cracker, everything from scratch in-house, but we kept it traditional. I didn't inside out it.
Hey, just because we're working on marshmallows here in the kitchen, how do you cut your marshmallow?
I cover mine too. I see you.
What do you cut on the guitar? Or do you cut them by hand?
We cut them on the guitar, and we pass them through, and we currently have 3 flavors. We do vanilla marshmallow, banana marshmallow, and rose water marshmallows.
So Beth, hold on a second. And I'm filming today from our dry room, right? So the painting room is the driest room in the building.
Yes.
So we store stuff in here, right? So Beth has been working on this marshmallow recipe, right?
Okay, yeah.
So she's kind of got this whole thing going on, but we're trying to make them so they're easier to cut on the guitar. So, because you cut them and they stick back together and you got to pull them apart, but then by the second cut, it's a real pain in the butt.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Beth has been working on.
Yeah.
But they're delicious.
The first
really
marshmallows I made, because I used to hand cut them, and then, I got fancy and got a guitar cutter, and I was like, ooh. I cracked every single string in my guitar cutter on those first ones. They weren't even hard. They were almost like just too rough. Like, I was just like, I can't believe the first thing I cut on the guitar literally snapped every single string. If anybody that follows me on Instagram probably saw those stories, because I was just like almost publicly crying.
But she figured out how to pack them in a flow wrapper.
You hand flow wrap those?
No.
Oh, right. There you go. That's what I mean.
So yeah, so you slide all 4. I'm like, how'd you do that? She goes, just slide them into the flow wrapper. I'm like, that's awesome.
Brilliant. It is brilliant.
This is what happens when I go away. Beth gets to do fun projects. When I'm here, she's like, there's all this lame stuff to do around here.
Yeah, well, that's the fun part of working in an environment like that, I mean.
Hey, so you referenced that the caramel stuck around and there's some other flavors that stuck around. What are some flavors that are going to stick around in your repertoire that aren't going to be retired because they're so popular?
So definitely the salted caramel has been a fan favorite. We have a local company that, because we're out here near the water, that hand makes and hand dehydrates sea salt. So we make a dark chocolate sea salt. I would love to take credit for that, but I'm sure the amazing salt has something to do with it.
Ingredient, if nothing else from this conversation, ingredients matter.
1,000%. Like, no questions asked. And actually, I'm a little bit of a salt nerd, as much as a chocolate nerd. Anything that has like terroir, or as they say in salt world, miroir, that I love. And I don't really think that it's an ingredient. I don't know, challenge me if you want, but I've always tried and call it like an enhancer, because in some
flavor crystal.
Yeah, because sometimes sometimes I've done consulting and they bring me into the pastry department, and I'm scoping around. One of the biggest mistakes where's the salt? Like, this is the pastry kitchen. Like, what do you think? It's going to make it less sweet? And like, it's not like a black or white thing. It's just, do you want it to taste like strawberries? Put some salt.
Yeah, so it's an ongoing, like anytime Beth hands me a recipe, she'll like hand me something to taste, and she goes, yeah, it needs more salt. Like she'll just look at me like, yeah, it's not salty enough for you. And like I don't, it's funny, like when I'm doing savory cooking, I hardly use salt at all because I just don't like it. But with what we do, definitely salt.
Yeah, it's just going to enhance anything. I mean, you're very fortunate if you really are like picking your strawberries and turning them into a puree right there. I mean, it calls to question like the stability of it, which is why a lot of us chefs use, brands that have done all the hard work and calibrated to the bricks and whatever for us. But you need to pump it somehow. And I think salt is just, it's the opposite. For me, the opposite of salty is not sweet. It's bland.
Right.
Like it's just bland.
What's the favorite thing you're doing right now what's your favorite?
So in my current signature collection, the banana walnut bread one that we do is definitely my favorite. I'm a sucker for banana, and I have like a little bit of a history with banana bread. And so that's a favorite, but I actually have a box that's releasing on the 17th next week. It's called An Ode to the North Fork, in which we collaborated with 8 different locations out here where we are. A vineyard, a brewery, a butcher, a donut shop, and we made bonbons, like I said, to highlight their product. So actually, I think I was just packaging them.
You might have one right here. Look at this.
Right. Unfortunately, I wish it was that perfect, but I'm sitting here packaging hundreds of boxes. So it's a little unorganized, but it's like a beautiful of all everything. But I'm just going to show you the one out of this that really kills it is we made donut bonbons. So we did a donut praline with like a milk chocolate ganache with sprinkles inside. It took me about, I want to say 16 months of R&D for that bonbon. No joke. But I think that's something that is, for me, the first time that I'm like all, my crazy, I'm waiting for some, maybe like a taco stand to want to partner. I want to do like a guac and salsa bonbon or a paella bonbon. You know what I mean? I'm the one that's going to go out there.
So is that box available on the website, online?
It will be starting next Thursday. So we are, if you are local, come by the shop. We will be offering a discount and samples and stuff like that. If you're lucky enough to be in New York, please come by. If not, we do ship nationwide. As most people, we kind of are in this weird spot where we're only offering overnight. But this box will come out annually. So it will still be around in the colder weathers for people to kind of get a taste of what's going on out here. We just have so many things happening in the north. People think the East End, they think the Hamptons. If you haven't been out here, they're so close but so different. And the North Fork is all about collaborating. A lot of farmland, like an immense amount of vineyards just in the last 30 years. So definitely, I wish I could take the credit, but the North Fork is very inspiring.
What did you do with the butcher? Somebody asked.
We did bacon and lard with cocoa nibs and dark chocolate. It's pretty smoky. They do like a bacon jam that we use to steep in the heavy cream. It's I mean, you have to love bacon, I think, because it does.
Are there people that don't love bacon?
Hmm?
Are there people that don't love bacon? Because like bacon is like the most perfect food.
Unfortunately, I think there are.
You know how you make bacon better?
What's up?
Do you know how you make bacon better?
Dip it in chocolate.
You wrap it in bacon. It's like if you want something to be better, you wrap it in bacon, right? You take an asparagus, you wrap it in bacon. You take a scallop, you wrap it in bacon. Bacon, you wrap it in bacon. It's better.
I agree with that. I don't think I just disagree with any part of that. And the bacon is great, and I love this butcher shop. And when I started with it, they let me do all sorts of crazy things. We did an Easter egg hunt, and I sculpted a pig and just like had it in the middle of the butcher shop for a week. So she lets me have fun in there.
Got it. Okay, so you're a Michelin-starred chef, and I don't want to insult you, but
What the
for
hell?
whatever reason, you end up in the 7-Eleven or whatever it is on Long Island, and you're coming back from grabbing your bottle of water, and you're in the candy aisle. What do you pick?
Honestly, probably goldfish, which I know it's not candy. It's not very sweet. I don't have a
Ursula, you got to work with me on this one. You got to try. You got to, okay, you're at the movies and you get your popcorn and your soda and you get one thing of candy. You got to get one. Pick one. You can't be the only person not to give an answer to this question in a year and a half. You got to pick one.
I guess I would have to say probably a Kit Kat bar if I have to pick any.
And that is the right answer. Winner.
Is a Kit Kat bar. I had one of some movie that's coming out at the end of the year. They wanted to recreate Mars bars, and I was like, you're gonna have to excuse me, I've never had one, so let me go research. And I then learned the whole history and everything, and turned out to actually really think it was a really cool story, and we did mimic them and stuff. But unfortunately, I was the girl that, like, I had to throw out my candy the night before Halloween from last year just so I could reuse my pillow sheet that year. I've never been a candy person.
Yeah. No, I get it. That's cool. I respect that.
But I mean, savory, I can eat salty all day.
All right. All right, here's a chance. Plug away. You kind of plug that box that's available next week already, but you get like as much time as you want to plug anything you want.
I have so many things coming up. A good thing to do would just be follow Just Add Chocolate, because we're constantly releasing new things. We retire flavors, bring them back. We do go on seasonality, so some things are only available for as long as the season is. We do release that signature collection for all like the foodies out there. We get crazy, fenugreek. We really do some crazy things. And then, if you are local, come see the shop. It's really beautiful. We've kind of got a whole flower installation going outside that we'll post about soon. And it's named Atelier just for that reason. We're going to start hosting a lot of workshops, classes, tastings, pairings with, again, a lot of collaborating happening out here. So I think the best way, I could plug a million things. The best way is to just follow us so you can keep up. But,
awesome.
I couldn't thank you enough, Brian, for.
Hey, this is fun. Thanks for. It was fun hearing the story.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe not as exciting as people expect it to be, but anytime I've been kind of watching whether it's live or later, since you do post them, since you did the first one with Chris, like however long this year has lasted, it feels like forever.
Yeah, well, it's only been like 15 months. You realize that? Like I was reading that it's only been 70 weeks.
Yeah,
I'm like it feels like 10 years.
Yeah, light years. So, but I can't thank you enough for doing things like that, because I was thinking of doing this at the beginning, and then it happened, and it was like, oh, holy crap, is this the right time to do it? And things like the chocolate chats and how people pivoted to make things work was just inspiring for me to be like, stop moping around and pivot. Like, okay, how can you make this happen different than what you thought? This is a curveball. This is life, But it really was things like that was like, because I don't know if you remember, I was supposed to come up for that. The first class that I had to cancel.
Right.
Was coming to help. I was so excited because I was going to come scope out the machines too, and this. And I was like, this is a sign. I shouldn't do this.
Not a sign.
But you guys.
Come up when you can. We'll spend a couple days on the panner.
I would love to. Absolutely.
We'll pan some weird stuff. We'll figure something weird out to pan.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm all about it. I'll bring some centers and some different things that,
Hey, last question. You don't have to answer it. What brand of chocolate?
I use strictly Valrhona.
One of those Circle V people.
I am not Circle V. Maybe I will be one day. I'm just the most familiar with their products because, like, Oriol is Circle V and has his own chocolate by them. I just happen to have worked with a lot of people, so I think Jessica from Bliss, like, I resonate with her story so much, but she kind of said it. It's like, if it isn't different enough from moving from like a bowl and a hairdryer to a melter to a tempering machine, imagine now also switching my chocolates completely. So it's, hey, if I don't get to Circle V, I don't mix it out, I don't anything. It's just I know some of the reps out there, so it was easy, and I think that they do a great job on also traceability, which is important because where I am, people worry a lot about local, and there's a little bit of educating and like, we're never going to grow cacao here, so let's settle for something that's traceable, where we can literally talk to the farmer should we want to go that far. So that's why, and you know, there are chocolates that are really good, but to across the board be like, I can find a use for almost anything that they make, that's a hard thing to find for sure.
That was a good answer. I'm going to send them the copy of that, like, so they can use that for more marketing plug. All right. All right, Ursula. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you, Brian.
We'll talk soon, okay?
We will.
Bye,
Thank you
everybody.
so
See you
much.
next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.